Hey guys, welcome to the screencast for government, and we are going to go over the Senate today. So we've already kind of um, covered some issues with the House and the House profile. So today you are going to go over the Senate, and we're going to go over the Senate and the Senate profile. So hopefully you can see this, and we're going to look at the slideshow presentation that you have on Blackboard. So the Senate is outlined in the Constitution with Article 1, Section 3. And so what are the statistics on the Senate? There are 100 members, 2 per state. That is determined by the Constitution, Article 1, Section 3, Clause 1. States are given equal representation. If we can remember the Federalist Papers and the argument between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, this is part of the Great Compromise. Anti-Federalists got equal representation in the Senate, and Federalists got proportional representation in the House. So every state, no matter size, no matter population, get the same number of representatives, 2 per state. This makes them responsive to state concerns. So your senators, Sherrod Brown and Rob Portman, are worried about Ohio as a whole. They're not worried about just Cincinnati or just Dayton. They're worried about policies that are good for the state collectively. So what are their terms of office? Senators serve for 6 years. That's actually a constitutional change that was presented by the 17th Amendment. 1/3 face re-election every 2 years. So this makes it a continuous body. The cycle completes every 3 years. So take, for example, this last election we had in November. There were 34 seats available. Ohio had 1 senator up, and Senator Portman was able to keep his incumbent seat, and he will be our senator in Ohio for another 6 years. 2 years from now, Sherrod Brown will be running for his seat, and then 4 years from now, no senators for Ohio will be up. Right? This provides a level of experience in government. We're always going to have 66% of the Senate knowing what's going on from year to year. It's good. It means only 1/3 face election pressure at any given time. It allows representatives to make responsible decisions. If you think about your life, right, you can probably remember an argument or a fight you had with somebody during your sophomore or junior year, and it may still affect your relationship. You're probably not really remembering very much that you did when you were in 6th grade or 5th grade, depending on whether you're a junior or senior. Right? So this allows them to make responsible decisions because they're not really facing as much election pressure as other bodies. The House is constantly facing that election pressure because they basically only serve 1 year, and then they're rerunning for election the second year of their term. What do you need to be a senator? Well, like we've seen in other houses, there are very few formal qualifications. You need to be 30 years of age, so a little bit higher age requirement than the House at 25 years. You need to be a U.S. citizen for 9 years. Again, a little bit higher requirement than the House at 7 years. You also need to be an inhabitant of the state from which you are elected. So if you want to serve as a senator in Ohio, guess what? Gotta live in Ohio. That keeps people accountable to their constituencies, the people they represent, and it's good for the states. So not a lot of formal requirements. There are, however, a lot of informal requirements. This is the upper house of our Congress. It's more prestigious, and we kind of expect more from our senators. So as we look through their profile, they're going to have higher levels of education. They're going to be older. They're going to tend to be people who are very successful. So what does our current Senate look like? All right, and these are some statistics that are going to go along with your Senate.gov worksheet. So if you have that, go ahead and feel free and get that out and fill some of that in, or you can search for it on your own online. There are 44 Democrats in the Senate currently, and if we look at the results from the last election, they've picked up 5 seats. So they have 49 seats starting in January. We have 54 Republicans, 2 independents. The average age is 61, so about 5 years higher than in the House at 57, but 57.2. But what we see here is it's way higher than the actual requirement of 30 years old. We have very few senators who are 30 years old. The average length of service is 9.7 years, meaning most senators end up serving 2 terms, which makes sense. If you get elected when you're 61, you serve 2 terms, you'll be done by the time you're in your 70s. There are 20 women in the Senate. Again, underrepresentation of our society at large, but we've gone into the social factors on why women tend to get elected and run for elections less. 2 African Americans, a far, far fewer representation than our public. African Americans make up 10 to 15% of the population, only 2% of senators. Hispanics 4, and Asian Americans 1. So you can see the representation in terms of how it reflects our public looks much differently statewide. And that can also equate to the fact that white Americans, Caucasians, tend to make up a much larger section of the population. So they kind of control more of those elections statewide. The bigger the pool of voters gets, the more diversity tends not to come into play. Senate profile in terms of level education. In the House, we saw that 20 had a high school diploma as our highest level of education. And you can see here how this becomes the higher house. No one has a high school education as their highest level. 26 have bachelor's, 16 have master's, 54 have law degrees. So more than half of them have law degrees, and then 3 are MDs, medical doctors. So education-wise, this is a far, far greater. 100% of them have bachelor's degrees. In terms of the general public, we're at 68%. So these people are highly educated when compared to the public. A good thing, because they're making a lot of the responsible decisions for the nation. In terms of Senate profile for religion, pretty reflective of our society and very similar to the House. 55 Protestant, 26 Catholic, 9 Jewish, 7 Mormon, and 1 Buddhist. The big difference is that all of them have religious affiliations. There's none who have no religious affiliation. Don't worry about finding a bill. We'll pick that up next week during some of your testing time. That'll be good to do. And then we will move on and talk about what our representatives get. What's their salary? What's their pay? What kind of happens at large? So sorry I couldn't be at school today, but Fitz appreciates you letting me take care of him. And go ahead and finish your Senate.gov worksheet. Go ahead and look into what Sherrod Brown, what Rob Portman, what legislation they've proposed, how to get a hold of them. Be sure and describe the bills that they've proposed. Don't just give me the name. Give me a description of what the bill does, and think a little bit about how that impacts Ohio and why that's good for Ohio. So hopefully you guys have a good day at school today. Go ahead and finish up that worksheet, and I will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.